on when you're watching this video, it is almost Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day is when we celebrate love and romance and everything that is pink and red and dotted with hearts. And so today I thought it would be fun to talk about our favorite book couples as chosen by you. A couple of days ago, I posted on my Instagram story and asked you guys to submit who your favorite book couples are. And I got a lot of responses. I think there was a total of like 63 couples that were officially submitted. Honestly, a lot of them I have not read their books and I didn't know who they were, but there were definitely a good amount of couples that I was familiar with and I had read their stories and I feel like I could talk about. So that is what we're gonna do today. But we're not just gonna talk about them. I am actually going to tier rank them and put them in a couple of different specific categories and figure out where they land on the love scale. So let's get into it. I have never done a tier ranking system before. I literally made an account about 5 minutes ago, so we're gonna figure this out together. But I have compiled a list of, I think, 21 couples to talk about that you guys ended up submitting. Our couples are Dorian and Manon from Throne of Glass, Iris and Roman from Divine Rivals, Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy from Pride and Prejudice, Percy and Annabeth from Percy Jackson and the Olympians, Katniss and Peeta and Katniss and Gale from the Hunger Games series, Xaden and Violet from Fourth Wing, Farah and Rhysand from A Court of Thorns and Roses, Aelin and Rowan from Throne of Glass, Cassian and Nesta, also from A Court of Thorns and Roses. We've got Anne and Gilbert from Anne of Green Gables, Luke and Addie from The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, Celia and Marco from The Night Circus. I was very happy that somebody submitted them. Poppy and Castile from Blood and Ash, Emily and Wendell from Emily's Encyclopedia of Fairies, Aragorn and Arwen from The Lord of the Rings, Elspeth and Raven from One Dark Window, Kai and Peyton from Powerless. For some reason, Draco and Hermione from not Harry Potter, but I guess Harry Potter. And then of course, we could not possibly have a list like this without including Edward and Bella and Jacob and Bella. So those are couples we're gonna be talking about. Let's reveal the categories that they will be going into. At the bottom here, we have toxic waste. There is no world where this couple should remain together. They are horrible for each other. Up next is unhealthy, but I'm invested. And I think there might be a surprising amount of couples that end up going into this category because a lot of them are unhealthy, but yet I just can't help but love them and feel invested in their relationship. Then we have in desperate need of some counseling. I think these are ones that could probably make it work, but they are relatively unhappy right now. Then we've got one of them deserves better, which I think is pretty self-explanatory. Functional for now, thriving, but not as deep as they think. Near the top, we have peak relationship goals. And then of course, our final category, fated by the stars, blessed by the authors. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. I think this is probably pretty obvious if you are this far into this video, but a lot of these couples, just the very fact that they are together may be a spoiler to some people. So there will probably be a light spoiler warning for this video, but I'm not gonna go into intense plot details if you've never read this book before, but I have to imagine you would have turned away if you didn't want to know who ended up together at the end of the book anyway. So first couple is Dorian and Manon from Throne of Glass. Honestly, I'm still a little bit on the fence with this couple because I love both characters separately. I think they're very strong. I think they have incredible character arcs, but sometimes it feels a little bit like they were just thrown together because they needed a significant other in the book. And also it's a little bit ambiguous how they end up at the very end of the series, if I'm remembering correctly. Like I feel like it was left a little bit on a let's explore and see where things go and not a firm, hey, we're soulmates, we're together, we're doing this thing. It seems like we left them and they were emotionally more invested in each other than they wanted to admit. They wanted to play it off as if it was a casual thing, but deep down inside, they know that it's endgame, but they haven't quite figured that out for themselves yet. And so for that reason, I think I'm gonna put them at either functional for now or thriving, but not as deep as they think. Functional for now, not necessarily meaning that they would break up later, but there would come a breaking point where a deep conversation would need to be had of, hey, let's define the relationship right now. What are we to each other? But I think I'm gonna be a little bit kinder than that and put them in thriving, but not as deep as they think. They're having fun. It's a good time. They like each other, but it's not quite that deep yet. But I think it could be. We're gonna put them there. All right, next up we have Iris and Roman from Divine Rivals. I personally really like their relationship. I like that it was developed over writing letters to each other. I think that that's a good way to get to know each other, and they really were able to connect on an emotional emotional level before it was a physical in-person connection, which means that they're pretty strong. However, in the beginning of the book, they kind of start off as not necessarily enemies, but definitely rivals. And especially on Iris's side, she does not like Roman. And I feel like they did fall a little too hard and a little too fast for each other. It definitely kind of flirted with the line of insta-love for me. However, they end in such a good spot and they don't play games with each other. Like, there's never any weird secrets. Well, there is a secret of identity for a little bit, but there's not any like purposeful miscommunication because of weird insecurities or things going on. Like, they freaking get married. They are all in, not holding anything back. They love each other. They're gonna make it work. And maybe they don't know each other super, super well, but they're just like, hey, you know what? That'll all come. Let's like make a full-time commitment here. And I respect that. I respect that. I think they still have a ways to go, but I am gonna put them at peak relationship goals just because they're committed and that's hard to do. All right, next up we've got Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth Bennet from Pride and Prejudice. I was very happy that somebody submitted this couple. I think that this is an interesting one because they, I would say, throughout most of the book and also the movie, I'm kind of going to take their relationship from the book and movie as sort of one. I read the book one time and it was quite a while ago, so it's not as fresh in my mind, but the movie is one of my favorite movies I've watched many, many times. And from what I remember, I think they do a pretty good job of distilling the relationship in the book down to the movie. Obviously, they can't go into as much detail as you could in a book, and that's just natural, but I think they did a good job at just the development for each character. But I am kind of taking both into account. I would say throughout most of this book, they are quite toxic, just individually. Elizabeth is extremely prideful towards Mr. Darcy, and obviously Mr. Darcy is extremely prejudiced towards Elizabeth. What I like about them is that they grow separately and individually before they grow together. That's why I think they're actually a pretty strong contender here. They put in the work, they don't come together when they're both not ready and in the right spot, because I think if they did that, they would have completely imploded and it would have been horrible and they would have remained in the toxic category. However, they put in the work, they developed, they grew as humans, and then after all that, they come together. Also, he falls first and he falls much harder, and I like that. We like that in a man. I don't think that they are fated by the stars, blessed by the authors, but I do think that they might end up in peak relationship goals. Again, I like the firm commitment at the end of the book and the end of the movie. I like how, once again, he falls first and he just does everything in his power to bring her over to his side while also still giving her independence and autonomy. And I like how she humbles herself and realizes what was wrong about the decisions that she made, and they came together, and I think they're in a really healthy spot right now. So we're gonna move to peak relationship goals. Next, we've got Percy and Annabeth from Percy Jackson and the Olympians. This is one of my favorite romances of all time, truly. It spans the course of, well, if you consider just the first series, 5 books. Is that true? The Lightning Thief, Sea of Monsters, Titan's Curse, Labyrinth, Final Battle. Okay, it spans the course of the first 5 books, and you could end it there, but then their relationship does really continue in the next 5 or 6 books. I truly don't remember how many are in the follow-up series, and it develops even more and even more beautifully, but I'm gonna focus on the first series. When they start out as kids, they're like 12 in the first book, and they end up in their late teens in the last book. The development in their relationship from unlikely friends to very close chosen family to absolutely the most wonderful and romantic relationship of all time. I love it. I think that they have created the strongest foundation that you possibly could in order to go into a relationship. They know each other better than anybody else knows each other. All of their little quirks, how they react to things, the decisions that they make, they know the why behind the what. They're so in tune to each other that I think a lot of times they don't necessarily have to explain themselves to each other. And that mostly just comes from time and effort put into a friendship first before going into a romantic relationship. And I do think that Rick Riordan took it from a platonic love to a romantic love really well. And also for something that's supposed to be young and middle grade reader, it felt like a serious relationship still. It didn't just feel like kids having crushes that maybe date for a little bit. It truly feels feels like endgame, and I think it's because of everything that they go through, the trauma that they experience together, the trials and the hardships, and how they come out on the other side. Honestly, flawless, no notes. They are truly fated by the stars and blessed by the authors. All right, next we're moving into our Hunger Games couples. Katniss and Peeta to start. They are endgame, and something about me that I have sort of talked about before is that I truly hate love triangles. I hate them. They're so stressful to me. The thing that I don't like about it is just the emotional effort that my personal investment takes for each couple. If I don't know who the main character is going to end up with, I'm putting unnecessary emotion into one of these couples, and it just feels like a total waste, and it's very frustrating, and it feels like the author is purposefully manipulating me to like one couple over the other, but I don't know who's endgame. Ugh, I can't stand it. It truly turns me off to a book series completely if there is like a love triangle in it. Hunger Games was one of those series. I powered through just because I was very, very invested in the series, and honestly, I would say the romance in this trilogy is a pretty subplot. It is not the main thing that we are focusing on, but man, Peeta and Katniss go through so much together, and Peeta also falls first, and Katniss just keeps him dangling on the hook way longer than is necessary, and she just kind of bounces back and forth between these two men, getting whatever she needs at the time. Does she need a physical connection with somebody who's super tall and super hot? Let me go to Gale. Do I need an emotional connection right now? I need to feel safe and understood and comfortable? Then I'll go to Peeta, but I'm not really attracted to him, you know? And it's honestly not fair to either of them, but it's particularly not fair to Peeta because Peeta is a true stand-up guy. And in my opinion, he deserved much better than Katniss, so he's going in the one of them deserve better category. And then for Katniss and Gale, they are so horrible for each other. Gale is an absolute jerk. He only cares about the drama. He only cares about the political sticking it to the man. He's honestly way too wrapped up in the moment to look ahead to the future and figure out what he wants for his life. He just wants drama. He wants chaos. He thrives off of it. And that is truly toxic, especially when you put it together with Katniss. They should never be together. 100% toxic waste. I'm not even invested in their unhealthy nature. They're toxic. All right, moving on to Fourth Wing, Xaden and Violet. I know a lot of people are gonna have a lot of things to say about them. I am definitely in the camp of being quite frustrated with them currently. In Fourth Wing, we kind of see their relationship develop. I think they were supposed to be enemies, like true enemies, because they're both sort of on either side of the war, and Violet's mother had something to do with Xaden's father's death, and he should hate her, and she knows that he wants to kill her, so she hates him, and it's like a whole thing. And I think we were trying to be spoon-fed this enemies to lovers story, but it honestly didn't end up developing that way, and it just ended up being I'm in lust with you for an entire book and completely obsessed with you in like an infatuation way. I don't think that their relationship goes very deep, especially in that first book. But then all of a sudden in book 2, it's like I'm fully in love with you and I want nothing to do with anybody else. And yet book 2 is just riddled with secrets and miscommunication and non-communication and jealousy, and this doesn't really relate to their actual relationship, but pitting girls against each other, villainizing a female friend, like no, it's bad. But then in the third book, I think it's kind of supposed to be like, hey, they got their crap together and they're super strong, but the world is falling apart around them. Everything feels very surface level though. Nothing actually feels warranted and earned because everything in the first book sort of just felt like it started off in lust. They are both extremely volatile characters. They are more volatile when they are together though. I am oscillating between unhealthy but I'm invested, because that's very true from my part, and in desperate need of some counseling. There are glimpses in a couple of the books of what it could be if it was a healthy relationship. There are glimpses of that. And because of that, I think that I am going to put them in the in desperate need of some counseling category because there is potential. I actually don't think that we will see that potential in any of these books that Rebecca Yarros writes, just because I think Rebecca Yarros also thrives off of the chaos and the drama, similar to Gale. But there are little nuggets of romance scattered throughout the books that is enough to give me just a slight bit of hope that if they were to go through some heavy duty counseling, they could get to a happier place. All right, now we're getting into the SJM category. Even though Doreen and Manon were in there, they're not a core couple, you know? Feyre and Rhysand, potentially potentially is the most popular SJM couple. And I say that just because of a numbers thing. I looked into it a little bit ago when I was doing my Throne of Glass reading vlog, but ACOTAR has outsold Throne of Glass by a wide margin. So if we look at it that way, whether or not they are the most liked and they deserve to be the most liked, they are probably the most popular. I personally love the ACOTAR books. I've said it before, I know there's plenty of problems with them. I think that maybe they are put on too high of a pedestal a lot of the times, but if you kind of boil it down to what it is, a fun romantasy with some very epic scenes, epic relationships. I love the found family tropes. I love the political aspects that it kind of gets into the later books. I really enjoy it, but you have to know what you're getting into. The relationship of Feyre and Rhysand, I think is relatively well done. And I think the only reason that I'm saying that is because we don't really get a lot of pining anymore in fantasy books, in romance books, specifically in series. I think it was more common for a relationship to be held kind of in this friction balance throughout the entire series, and they don't get together until maybe the second to last book or the very, very last book. You know, it's not like a fourth wing thing where all of a sudden Xaden and Violet are together halfway through the book, and then the rest of the 5 books that were with them, they're just going through, they're breaking up and they're going through conflict and then they're getting back together and then they're fixing it and then all of these things happen. That is becoming more normal now, and I don't like it. I want you get to know each other in the first couple of books and there's tension and there's friction and it's a very like will they, won't they, and one of them is pining after the other and you know that they're supposed to be together, but you're just being held on this precipice for so long, and then when they finally do get together, it's so satisfying. And I think that Feyre and Rhysand actually gave us that. There was a hoodwink for sure with Tamlin where you thought maybe it was going to be one of those books where they get together in the very first book and then they have to go through all of this crap at the end of it. You definitely thought that was going to happen. And then, you know, there's the old bait and switch of Tamlin becoming Tampon and Rhysand becoming End Goal. I think that Rhysand is the ultimate wife guy. And I think that Feyre is the ultimate passenger princess. She starts out as this grizzled, young, traumatized human, and then she kind of goes through this process of getting into the Night Court and getting together with Rhysand and all of these things, and she has all this privilege now and power and money, but she's still just like a simple girl on the inside. But like, not really. She's a passenger princess and Rhysand does everything for her, and that's great. I love Feyre, but let me roast her for a little bit. Homegirl really does go from traumatized huntress to high lady of the Night Court, but again, she just still insists that she's the simple girl. She's a human at heart still. She hasn't lost her humanity. Ma'am, you live in a palace full of stardust. You have power from every single High Lord in the realm, and your personal problems have literally started wars. At least own it. And Rhysand really kind of falls into the category of like, I'm a feminist, but only for very specific people. I'm a feminist for Feyre, and I'm a feminist for more. Like, this man will write poetry about Feyre's breathing patterns, and his entire personality boils down to Feyre, darling. I love the obsession between the two of them. I do love the pining. I love how long it took for them to actually get together. I don't like the secrets. I don't like how self-obsessed Feyre is at times, but once they actually get together and they are a firm couple, I think they're really strong. That may come down to a writing style though of, hey, as soon as they get together or they get married or whatever happens, they don't actually experience any conflict and problems between them as a couple, which is not realistic, but at the same time, I can't complain about it because at least it's enjoyable. At least I'm not stressed out when they break up again. I think that they are a little bit surface level, but they've sort of trauma bonded at the same time. I'm trying not to let my personal bias speak here, but I think I'm gonna put them in peak relationship goals. As much as they have problems as individual characters, I think that they are a very good couple. Moving on to Aelin and Rowan. This is an interesting one. I am halfway through my second reading of Throne of Glass. I have just finished Heir of Fire, which is when Aelin and Rowan meet. It's the first time you meet Rowan, and they kind of go through their entire foundation of their relationship where they're like punching each other and biting each other and literally beating the crap out of each other. But there's something so beautiful about how slow their relationship takes to form, where especially on Rowan's end, he just wants nothing to do with Aelin for so long. I think Aelin attaches herself to him more quickly and wants to be around him just because there's something that is very safe to her. Rowan, for a long time, literally just wants nothing to do with Aelin and doesn't take her seriously until he kind of starts to learn her backstory, which I actually appreciate because I sort of feel the same way about Aelin and Selena. I really don't like her in the beginning. I think she's immature, I think she's obnoxious, and she's bullheaded and just not a great character. But as you start to spend more time with her, as you start to see different sides to her, the depth of her character just kind of explodes in a good way. And so I almost feel like I am endearing myself to Aelin at the same pace and at the same time that Rowan is endearing himself to her. And I really enjoy that. And I really enjoy how for most of the beginning of their relationship, it is platonic. It's very friendship, but like family friendship where you guys are with each other to whatever end, but there's not the pressure of romance on it for a while. And then when that romantic pressure comes, that's when again the tension starts to build and it gets kind of exciting for the reader and it's very will they, won't they? And then when they do, it is so amazing. The scene on the beach, my God, it's so good. And I actually do think that they have put in the work on the platonic friendship level in order to set them up for a good romantic relationship. And differently to Feyre and Rhysand, where once they get together, they kind of never actually face any relationship issues anymore. Like they face world issues and issues related to a war and a battle, and that is definitely something. But Aelin and Rowan continue to face some like conflict issues that they have to work through together. And because of that, I think they just end up as one of the strongest couples here. But it wasn't easy. It was very, very difficult. But man, it's really difficult for me not to put them in Fated by the Stars, Blessed by the Authors. I'm just gonna do it. Frick it. This is my video. They're going here. They put in the work. There's a lot of pining. There's a lot of tension. There's a lot of time until they get together, and I'm here for it. I'm absolutely here for it. It feels earned. It feels realistic and believable, and I love it. And they're soulmates. They're going up there. Moving on to Cassian and Nesta. I almost want to put it in the one of them deserves better category because Cassian absolutely deserves better, but not to discredit Nesta because I do like Nesta. I just think that she's a better character if she's single and alone. She needs to learn her independence and her autonomy, especially as a woman in A Court of Silver Flames and as it relates to female friendships by herself. And I think everything that has to do with Cassian feels unnecessary. And again, it's very driven by lust. There's not a lot of emotion in it until like the very end, but then it's at that point doesn't feel very real. It's just like all of a sudden, hey, we're mates and we love each other, and that's how that works. I also think Nesta is extremely toxic for most of the series and most of the book, but Cassian is also a little bit toxic. They're not at the Xaden and Violet level of in need of some counseling. I also do really like Nesta at the very end. I think that she goes through enough that it kind of works. I'm gonna put them in functional for now. I think that there is not a lot of depth to their relationship, but they think there's depth to their relationship, but there needs to be more. And there will come a breaking point where either they will break up or they'll move on to thriving and relationship goals and maybe even Fated by the Stars. Moving on to Anne and Gilbert from Anne of Green Gables. This was also really fun to see that somebody put this here. I love this couple. I grew up with my mom reading me Anne of Green Gables, and we would always watch the old show. Ugh, Jonathan Crombie, Gilbert Blythe, he's absolutely perfect in every way. I love him. I think that this relationship is also kind of like a Percy and Annabeth, you know, where you see them as young kids or children and they just develop into adulthood with a beautiful foundation for a relationship. I love the pining from Gilbert. I love it. It's so sweet. And I love how fiery Anne is with him and how resistant she is to him for so long, and then how he just kind of changes her mind. And honestly, such a beautiful romance all the way from childhood to adulthood. I enjoy it so much. I think that they are definitely Fated by the Stars, Blessed by the Authors. They put in the work. They deserve to be up there for sure. Okay, next couple is Luke and Addie LaRue from The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Whoever put this is absolutely crazy. I can't believe that this was submitted to me. I honestly saw it and laughed so hard. They are very, very near the bottom. They're literally trying to basically destroy each other in the end of it. Addie is not signed up for Luke. Luke. It is a toxic mess, but I'm really invested in it. I'm really invested in it. I think truly they would murder each other one way or another, and I just want to see what happens. I love it. So extremely unhealthy, but I'm invested. Moving on to Celia and Marco from The Night Circus. The Night Circus is one of my favorite books and one of my favorite romances. I was so excited when I saw that somebody put this in here. I think that their romance is really beautiful. It is totally star-crossed lovers. It's not enemies to lovers, but it's star-crossed lovers. They are rivals. They are not allowed to be together. Being together would probably kill one or the other, and they have to kind of figure out a way to get past that. And I think that it is so beautiful. However, it definitely is a lot of infatuation. I don't know if for most of the book it goes deeper than that. I think at the end, where they finally kind of end up, you can make the case for they're definitely in love and it's beautiful, but for most of the book it is infatuation, and it's almost like a you want what you can't have kind of situation. It definitely builds tension and friction, and you're excited to read that relationship and see what happens, but it doesn't feel deep enough for me. However, I would say that they're thriving. They just don't know that it needs to go deeper. So that's where I'm gonna put them. They're definitely better than functional. I would say they're thriving, but not as deep as they think. They got some stuff to figure out still. All right, Poppy and Castile. I have not read the entire series of From Blood and Ash. I've read the first book and I've read about 50% of the second book, and then I DNF'd it and gave up and didn't want anything else to do with the series. I think these are pretty terrible characters, to be honest. I think it's a pretty terrible relationship. I think it is totally based on lust and not love. They don't care about who the other person is as a human or as a person. They only care about their body and what they can get from them. It is an extremely selfish relationship, at least up until what I read. Maybe it gets better. I am completely aware that I haven't finished the series. I don't know how the relationship fully forms and takes place, so I'm going to really rate this based off of the first 1.5 books. It's toxic waste, guys. It is absolute toxic waste. There is no part of this couple that should be together at all in any way. It's so bad. Our next couple though is Emily and Wendell. So this is an unfinished series. Emily's Encyclopedia of Fairies is not complete. The first 2 books are out and the third one comes out I think in April, and I think that finishes it. So there is a little bit here that is unknown of where they're gonna end up, but I think that their relationship is so cute. They kind of start out as rivals as well, or our main character Emily thinks they start out as rivals, but really Wendell has this massive crush on Emily and just wants to be near her as much as possible. Book 1 has one of the cutest confessions of love that I have ever read. It's so sweet and adorable. And in book 2, it still is very obvious that Wendell maybe is more invested in the relationship than Emily is, and Emily really likes Wendell, but she's kind of a very logical, literal person and doesn't necessarily let herself feel those types of emotions all the time. So she's kind of unsure of everything still. But throughout the course of book 2, I think that Wendell kind of still stays in the same spot that he's always been at, where he has like deep affection for Emily. But Emily, whereas in book 1, she's way over there. She doesn't like Wendell at all, and she thinks that he's just there to bother her and annoy her. She kind of gets maybe here by the end of book 1 where she's like, oh, you like me? Maybe I like you. I don't know. We'll have to figure that out. But then by book 2, I think she really gets on Wendell's level, and that is such a beautiful progression to me of seeing her feelings change from the beginning of book 1 to the end of book 2. I can't put them in Fated by the Stars, Blessed by the Authors, because I don't know what's going to happen in book 3. But as of right now, I would say with the way that Emily has grown, with the way that her feelings have developed, they are peak relationship goals, in my opinion. Aragorn and Arwen is also an interesting one. I was very excited to see that somebody put this on here, because honestly, their relationship in the books is super boring, and you don't even really see them on the page together that much. Even in the movies, it's a little bit boring, but at least in the movies, you see the emotional turmoil from them both of how badly they want to be together. And I think that is why it kind of developed into such a strong and iconic couple, is because of the movies and the actors that portrayed them. Like Viggo Mortensen is the king of pining and opening doors and other things. And he makes their relationship also kind of like a star-crossed lovers thing so believable and intense. And I really, really like that. But if we're looking at just their straight up relationship timeline and how much time that we actually spend with them as a reader, there's very little information to go off of here. I think that we are being told that they are fated by the stars, blessed by the authors, but there's not enough evidence to back it up. And again, I'm trying to go against my personal bias here because I would probably put them in the top tier. But if we're looking at just what information is available to us, I think they can't go top tier. I think they have to be peak relationship goals. I feel good about that because they are deep. It's a deep relationship. It's a very attached relationship. We just don't spend enough time with them to know if they are fated by the stars. So they're gonna live in peak relationship goals. Next, we have Raven and Elspeth from One Dark Window. Caveat here, I have not read the second book in this duology, so I'm going to be judging this relationship purely on the first book. Something that I've said about the first book a couple times is that there's not a ton of character development, in my opinion. There's a lot of plot development. There's a lot of world building that I really, really enjoy. But from a character perspective, not a lot happens, and especially with the romance. This is another instance where I wish that the author had saved the romance for like middle to end of the second book, honestly. Like, I didn't need it in the first book because now I know they're gonna be together in the second book, but probably go through some conflict, probably go through some crap that's gonna break them up, and they're gonna get back together and break them up and get back together. And if that doesn't happen, then it almost becomes an even less believable relationship because they don't actually work through anything. So it's kind of like a catch-22. There's really no option that I would enjoy because they got together so early in this book. And it kind of was a surprise, and it didn't really feel that earned to me, where it's like, oh, we're kissing now. Why are we kissing? I thought it was just kind of like an attraction thing, but they didn't actually really like each other that much. It felt like their relationship really came out of nowhere to me, and I wish that the author had spent more time developing that. I think right now they are functional. They're functional for now. They need to put in some work. I need to see a lot more development on both of their ends in order to bump them up to a higher category, but I guess they're working currently. We'll see. Next, we have Kai and Peyton from the Powerless series. Another caveat, I have not read Reckless, and I know Fearless is not out yet, but I have not read the second book. I've only read the first book. This is an interesting one because I think a lot of people love this relationship, but once again, there's not a lot of information for us to love. Like, they're okay. We are told that they're supposed to be enemies here, but then there's a lot of attraction that goes on. But then at the end of the book, they end up as enemies again. What I do like about this is that I feel like we're kind of kept in tension. We're kept on the edge here. Lauren Roberts didn't just give us them being together in the first book, and I do appreciate that, but it's so early days with both of them. Again, according to the first book, it's so early days. I don't really know where to put them, honestly. Well, you know what? They can't go in functional because they end up as enemies at the end of the first book. Honestly, because of their relationship status at the end of Powerless and everything that I see at the end of Powerless, I gotta put them in some desperate need of counseling. They have the potential to work, probably, but they need to put in a lot of work before that happens. So, in desperate need of some counseling. The next is Draco and Hermione. This was submitted to me 3 different times on my Instagram story, and I have to be honest, I didn't realize the extent of fan fiction that goes into Draco and Hermione. I have not read any of the fan fiction, okay? But I had to put this on here because I wanted to talk about it. What is going on? Like, why are we doing this? I am simply going to talk about them from the perspective of the canon book series. I know that is not what was intended when people submitted this on my Instagram story, but that is the only information that I have to go off of. So we're going to talk about it based off of the Harry Potter series. There is no world where these characters would work. And honestly, I don't really get the love that Draco receives from fans. I don't get it. I understand that he was dealt a pretty difficult lot in life, okay? There's very much a nature versus nurture thing going on here. He was nurtured to be bad. I understand that. I have empathy for that. However, he doesn't show us any glimpses of how he can be good. The only glimpses that we get of him being good or potentially making a right decision is out of fear and self-preservation. He is not making a right decision because he feels like it's right. He's making a potentially maybe right decision because he's an absolute coward. And again, I understand he was raised to be that way. He had no other option but to be the way that he is. But still, we don't see any other sides of him. So why does he get so much love? And why are people putting him with Hermione? This wouldn't work. This is toxic waste. I'm not invested. They would never work. It doesn't make sense. Absolutely not. I hope I'm not offending people too deeply here, but I guess I just don't get it. I'm a little confused by it. It's just difficult for me to accept something that is outside of canon. I think I immediately discredit it in my own mind, which isn't necessarily fair to the work of fiction that I'm reading, but that's just kind of how I relate to it. If I know it's not canon, if I know it's not real, then I can't attach myself to it and let myself go through the emotions of reading it. It's kind of like the love triangle thing. If I know that my main character is going to end up with one specific person, I'm completely detached from the other person, the other side of the love triangle. I want nothing to do with. And I know that's not necessarily what the author intends. You're supposed to feel all spectrums of emotion when it comes to these relationships. I just can't. I just need to land on one side and be done with it. And I feel kind of similarly with fan fiction and canonized events. Like, this is what's real. I have to stick with what's real and what's true. Anyway, moving on to the worst love triangle of all time, Edward and Bella and Jacob and Bella. Another caveat here. Don't come at me with your pitchforks. I have not read Twilight. I have never read any of those books. However, I did recently watch the entire movie series for the first time a couple months ago, so it's fresh in my mind. I watched it with somebody that had read the books and knew a lot about the characters and kind of explained what was wrong in the movies, what they got different, how the books actually go. So I feel like I got a relatively okay grasp on maybe the differences between the books and the movies. But just so that people don't hate me, I'm mostly going to be judging these relationships based off of the movies. I had to throw them in there because they're kind of like the iconic book couple, you know? Let's start with Bella and Jacob. Everybody loved Jacob because of Taylor Lautner when they were 12 years old during the movies, because he's super tan and has a six-pack. He is one of the worst characters of all time. So immature, so self-centered, so manipulative. Holy crap, he's a walking red flag. And Bella loves it. And he's pretty similar in the books. Like, he's better in the books is what I've heard. He's not as bad in the books as he is in the movies, but he's very manipulative. Everything that happens with his relationship with Bella is toxic waste. The absolute iconic couple of toxic waste. They are the poster children for toxic waste. And Edward and Bella, here's the thing. Edward is wonderful. Edward only wants what is best for Bella. And yes, it probably starts out as infatuation, and that's kind of unhealthy. He's pretty obsessed with her, but I think it gets to a healthy place for him specifically. Bella never gets healthy in the movies. I have also heard that Bella is a much better character in the books, and they just kind of butchered her in the movies for sure. But based off of what I know, the information I have on the books, and what I witnessed in the movies, Edward deserves better for sure. Edward deserves much better. I feel pretty good with this list. I don't think there's anything that I want to change around. Shout out to our Fated by the Stars, Blessed by the Authors couples, Percy and Annabeth, Aelin and Rowan, and Anne and Gilbert. This was very, very fun. Thank you so much for participating in this. Thank you for submitting couples for me to talk about and to rank. I'm planning on doing a lot more of these question boxes and polls on my Instagram moving forward. So if you're not already following me over there, I have a link in my description to the profile. There'll be lots of discussions and polls and questions, and I would love for you to come hang out there as well. Let me know if you disagree with some of these rankings and these picks. What couples would you have liked to see ranked on here? And as always, thank you so much for watching and joining and hanging out with me on this corner of the internet, and we will see you next time.